I, bought a van and why am I going to drive around the country? Well, I'm passionate about the idea that you need to be heard. And I want to stitch these stories together across the states. We're going to find the commonalities, and it's going to be really an amazing experience, and I look forward to you joining me on the Jar.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, very cool. I'm getting a little fancier now with my intros. Welcome, John.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Ken.
Yeah, welcome everybody to this is now, it's from the show we're doing now is called Mental Health Today and today we've got John Truitt. The Mental Health Today show is sponsored by the Jar Foundation. It's coming out of the work I've done with the Jar, kind of just seeing the state of mental health across the U.S. and wanting to try to do something. So we've got a nonprofit called the Jar Foundation, and we're going to start funding and doing things like this around the mental health space, raise awareness, see if we can address some of the stigma through, especially somebody like John talking, an adult male in business, in real life, going to share a story. We'll talk about, and some of the guests will help address cost, and some of them will address access, and some will talk a little bit about the educational aspect. But I think John's for sure is going to, maybe touch a little bit all three. So John, welcome to the show. Thanks for being on and being part of the fabric. Little beehive. I kind of was calling it a hive mind we're going to kind of create at some point, get some buzz going. So how about a little bit about John? What are you doing in the mental health space? Maybe give us a couple of minutes on that, and then maybe we'll kind of slip into, where's that aha moment in there that's got you fired up?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was diagnosed at 45. I had absolutely no idea that I had any mental health differences or conditions. At 45, I was diagnosed. I'm on the autism spectrum. Okay. I'm dyslexic, which is really, really odd because I've always read, I was hyperlexic as a kid. And being autistic, you're very asynchronous. Okay. So in kindergarten, I was reading at a 5th and 6th grade level. I apply math at a grad school level, yet I calculate math at the 10th grade level. So it's a very, very thing, which, as you can imagine, causes its own challenges. But the dyslexia was a big surprise. My mom has her master's in early childhood development. No one ever caught it. My dad's a doctor. His dad's a doctor. Just no one ever thought anything. And basically later in life.
That's bananas.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, we're probably not supposed to use the word crazy, but yeah, we're crazy. I mean,
that was crazy.
Yeah, it
wow.
Was. But yeah, so my full diagnosis, I'm ASD level 2, dyslexic, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, OCD, and bipolar.
And bipolar.
Yeah. Which autism and bipolar can overlap. And it's a real, when you start getting into that, it becomes very complicated. So I've had a number of psychiatrists and psychologists. The psychologists all definitely concur I'm on the spectrum. Psychiatrists tend to think I'm bipolar. So you often, like everything else, and it's not really if your only tool is a hammer, everything's a nail. But really, it's not fully that, but you see what you're trained to see. And the psychiatric community isn't really trained to see autism. They're really trained to see more of the bipolar side of things. But I've really come to terms with all of it. It doesn't matter, whatever label you want to put on it. I've had my successes and failures, and they are what they are. And I'm glad that I sought a diagnosis. It saved my marriage for sure. Completely pivoted my life from being in my
What happened? Yeah, what happened? Why would you, if nobody sees it, and you're 45, there must have been some symptoms or some weirdness happening, and you ended up.
Yeah, lots of anxiety, depression, lots of anxiety, and really getting angry a lot. And I didn't realize this, and apparently it's fairly common. I had been anxious so long for so much of my life, I didn't know what it felt like not to be anxious.
Well, that makes total sense.
And it felt weird. Yeah, I mean, when I first found the right medicines, it felt strange at first, kind of like, what's going on? So you had to kind of acquaint yourself with it to really understand kind of what it is,
This is what you're sitting around going, is this what people do? They just sit around and they're relaxed?
Yeah, exactly. I swear that's exactly it. It was like, and I'm still, and this is a very spectrumy thing. I don't like to sit around. I don't chit chat. We're not chit chatting. We're talking about factual things. So it's very, very easy, but like a cocktail party, it's really tough. How are the kids? And, like, come on, let's get there. Chit chat's really tough. I have low executive function, which again is part of the autism. So it's very easy for me to have a conversation with one person. To shift from person to person is extremely difficult. So how neurotypicals are, they can kind of glide. My wife is a master of working a room. She can have 10 conversations at once and transition beautifully. I can't. It's total hard stop and then have to pivot, which you can imagine socially can look all kinds of ways. Can look like you're a total jerk, can look like you're not paying attention. And that's not the case at all. So yeah, there's lots of dynamics.
A lot to unpack, right?
It's
even for me to like imagine what it's like being you in a room and not knowing it's not normal.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I use that, people are really wrapped around all kinds of terms and stuff. It's not normal. It is by definition abnormal if you're looking at what the rest of society is. And I have no problem with that. Yeah, I have no problem being quirky. The last thing I want to do is be an old white guy with a picket fence, 2.2 kids, that's nothing about that appeals to me. I like being different.
And I just met somebody else. It was a adult diagnosis of autism. And, we were talking about it a little bit. I'm like, that might be even me a little bit. I'm probably somewhere. I feel like I'm probably on the spectrum somewhere. And, at the end of it, I was like, maybe I'll get tested. Maybe I should go take this test online. And then I decided, I don't know, I was laying in bed or in the shower, waking up or something. I said, I don't think I want to. There's labels. And that might it'll be a label for me. And then also it's my superpower right now.
100%.
I don't know what it is, but it's my super. And if I put a label on it, it might be my kryptonite. Right now, my secret sauce is me.
Yeah. No, it's
exactly quirkiness, right?
Yeah. I feel very much, I've had my own private companies. I was part of an IPO. I was key man in an IPO when I was 30. I actually don't have a college degree. I went for a year and a half and it was exceptionally boring. I've always been bored in school because I'm very autodidactic. So
that is so funny.
It'll work. My peer group throughout my career have been physicians. I was in med device. So a lot of what I learned was it was through Socratic exchange, and they would prompt a topic and then I would either learn from them or go out on my own and just learn it. So it's not that I can learn the world on my own, but it's like with the formal college setting. I mean, day one, tell me what you need. I'll take the test and we're done. And if I don't know it, I'll go do it over the week and come back and let's be finished. I mean, it just really, it's just a totally different way. Again, very asynchronous.
Super interesting.
It's been different, but it's been great. And like I say, my successes are not in spite of my differences. They are due to my differences.
And that's what I had. That's the kind of theme I think we're going to come up with on like people, especially, I mean, somewhere on the spectrum, obviously you're going to far down on some of this and maybe it's more difficult. But if the secret sauce, it's some part of the range.
And it is. And I mean, there can be a lot of unfairness toward people that are lower, quote unquote, lower, which I hate the terms low and high. There are brilliant nonverbal people out there who just can't communicate that way. And they found new ways to communicate and find out that these people are, some of them, geniuses.
Yeah. behind the, maybe the vision is not great, right? You've got, I just met somebody yesterday and you look and, there's behind, like you said, behind the eyes is probably a supercomputer.
Yeah, a lot of times, yes. And then the other side of that is, some people, and the original diagnosis was Asperger's, which is no longer used. And that's at usually the quote unquote higher end. I'm actually what's called twice exceptional. I don't know if you're familiar with that term.
No, I don't know.
That's when you're talented and gifted and you also have a difference. So there's 2E is the big term. I'm multi-E because of all the things I put out there, the dyslexia plus the autism plus. So, the concept is that you're exceptional twice because of your talented and giftedness. And then you have this difference that will either hold you back or change what's going on. And it doesn't always hold you back. I mean, I credit the dyslexia with a lot of my creativity. I started painting right after I got diagnosed, and I was just doing it for myself. And a year into it, I'm in 2 galleries and people are buying my paintings. It was something I was doing in the backyard, just for fun.
And again, and you're selling it in the gallery.
2 galleries, yeah, one in Galveston, Texas, and one in Cortez, Colorado, which is fun. I mean, it's neat. And again, that's a lot of how stuff I have found for many of us on the spectrum develops. You just start doing your thing, and then the thing becomes something, whether it's creating a video game or a painting or building a business, or, it all kind of blends together. And I generally use it. So I'll sit down, spend a lot of time. It looks like I'm procrastinating. I'm not. It's just kind of building in my head what I want to do. Yeah. And then there's an intense kind of download of where I just go for it. Like I do what I can do in 4 hours, what neurotypicals can do in 3 days, yet it takes me the 3 days to build up to do it in 4 hours, if that makes sense.
It's a bit actually how I feel like I operate as well. A lot of mind work, a lot of, like you said, and the download is a great way. It's like a rendering.
Yeah,
even
it really is.
Like your word download has left me to the next one. Even a better word is rendering in your mind, right?
It's exactly what it's like rendering. Yeah,
it's a rendering, right? And then it's just a matter of just through your hands, through the pen, through the tip of the pen, and onto the paper.
Yeah, it's
very interesting
how it works. And I use the creativity part. I also have expressive and receptive communication disorder, so I may stumble over what I have to say, but I will I'll pivot from working on a business plan to going and painting, then to playing bass, then back to my business plan, and I'll do it like I can do that multiple times a day and just keep the energy flowing.
Yeah, keep it from one to the next. Mm-hmm. That's great.
And it works really well. Yeah. And I'll have business ideas while I'm painting, and I'll have painting ideas while I'm playing bass, and it just kind of does its thing.
Are you writing music or writing words? Like do you?
I write a lot of words. I do lyrics and kind of this combination of prose, poetry. You can't really class it for what it is. It's
what it is, right?
Words. I do write my own music, but I play by ear, so I don't read like formal music. It's all done by ear, and I've never had lessons or anything like that. Yeah.
I love it. The painting thing is interesting. I like the painting part because it is tactile, right? You're touching stuff. You've got the brush, the paints, the canvas.
Yeah, it is. I'm glad you said that too, because it was wild. I was actually in a board meeting and looked over at my COO. I was one of the companies I was executive chairman of, and I just said, "Look, you've got this meeting. We've been working together 15 years. I'm going to the art store." And he looked at me like, "You don't paint? Like what are you going to the art store for?" Yeah. I walked in and zero art training. I'd never touched paints, anything. And I looked at watercolors, and they honestly kind of seemed weak. They're just like, that's not, enough in my face. Oils were messy. So I gravitated toward acrylics.
Yeah.
Picked up a brush, and it felt very odd. So I got a palette knife and got a canvas and went home, and I put the canvas flat down on a table, and I paint flat, and I use a palette knife. And I do a lot of different expressive stuff. And, I was aware of artists like Jackson Pollock and Picasso and stuff. I mean, I'm not an art history major, but I understood a little bit about what they did, and actually didn't care for that. Like I like, or used to like, more stuff like at the Louvre, like the Coronation and the big kind of literal stuff. And it's completely flipped. But I found out that there are actually artists like Pollock that paint flat. And in no way am I saying the quality of my art is like Picasso or Pollock. I want to be very clear, but the way it's created and just organically how I did it, our minds work similar. And Pollock was diagnosed as bipolar, but he was probably bipolar and autistic. Not sure in Picasso, if anything, probably autistic, but it can show kind of how the mind works in similar ways. And there are other autistic people throughout history that, you can look at, and I look at, and it's like, that different thing they do, I also do that.
I would see, the way I think you could take, as you were talking, you would hear Picasso, like his final paintings, a lot of that stuff is some kind of mid-journey rendering of
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Right. So it is that broken, the way we, the way we, like I say, right. The way you see things, right. The way you see things in those kind of abstract shapes. And as things kind of come and go to like in and
Yeah.
out of focus, I could see where you put these parts together with the pen. And that really is right. Picasso was autistic, and these are the different frames that he sees in the rendering and de-rendering. Probably he's pulling stuff back and not in and out of focus.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. And again, on Pollock, if you go and like you look at his more famous stuff, particularly with the lines, and I forget what it is, number 48. It's one of the very famous ones that he numbered that's in the 40s. It's actually the golden ratio in it. And I don't think he actually knew that he was putting the golden ratio into it necessarily. But all those loops, I mean, that's the 1.62 spiral. That's the golden ratio that's going all the way through that. So when you look at it, it's pleasing to the eye or makes sense, even though it's so abstract. So
is that your stuff hanging in the back?
Those are two of my worst paintings ever. I'm down to like a shop. My goods, those are, but they're very old and they're very poor. It's not my good stuff.
I love it. I mean, it's it's like the last, like it looks like it took 3 off the wall already and sold them, and
they've moved. And this is kind of my area at the house where I stage all my stuff. So there's old ones, and I'll repaint over existing ones just to get the texture. So if I paint something I don't like, I'll simply paint over it, and that gives a background texture, and I can just keep going. And those end up selling well, actually. I guess people are super into texture these days, so that works.
Yeah, and with acrylic, it is kind of a fun. You can, it's pretty interesting. Tell us about the foundation. How did you've got this diagnosis, and like you said, I'd like to say it's become your secret sauce. You figured out how to sell it and package it, and and it's like a fountain of youth in the same way. Right now that it's your superpower.
Yeah, I love it.
So tell us, what are you doing with the foundation, and what's the ideas behind it? And
well, so kind of to just quickly where I started it, a couple of things that were not totally unique about me, but different than most. I didn't ever dispute the diagnosis. Once I went through, I did 3 days of testing. It's very intensive testing, came out, knew what the diagnosis was. I immediately embraced it because it was like, well, what else is it going to be? And called some of my closest friends, and they were like, oh yeah, we hadn't thought of that. That's you. So it was very easy. My wife was exceptionally supportive. She came to the testing with me. So it made all of that, it made it a lot easier. And really at the end of those 3 days, I was like, I've got to get the hell out of for-profit stuff. This is killing me. And I want to do a foundation. So went out and called a guy who had been, he worked for me as my chief financial officer in the publicly held company. And he was doing some different things, and said, hey man, would you like to come and CEO this for me? Because structure wise, as I learned, I'm not a great structure. I'm a creative. So he's come in, laid the structure down, and we've been going about 5 years with it. And the mission is actually migrated as I've learned more and more about the community. So originally it was the entire spectrum, the entire autism spectrum, because again, being autistic, you want to take on everything. It's like, give me the biggest thing you have and let's do this. So it kind of migrated from that to what has formerly been known as Asperger's, to really understanding that I'm 2E twice exceptional, and we've really targeted it down to that. So I mean, I'm always happy to help anyone and everyone. Where I really connect with people are on that 2E level. That's kind of where it is. And there's nothing in the space that serves people like us. I mean, it's just non-existent.
Very interesting. Very interesting. That's a journey. What was it like? So we talked offline a little bit. It wasn't a straight line from, I'm having troubles in my marriage, sounds like maybe at the job, you're like, the corporate stuff, being the structured person, right? Putting that hat on and playing that character would be internally just destroy you internally.
Oh, and
you could do it because you're because you got that, because you're a double, right? You're a double, like you got the double. So you're like, I can do it, but this may kill me. And
that's that's very accurate.
So how did you get diagnosed, and what was that road like to get to that 3 days?
Again, it had always been very asynchronous. When your dad and granddad are doctors, and your mom and grandmother, or you have master's degrees and stuff like that, the expectation is, it was always, well, I'm either going to be an attorney or a doctor, and this is how it would go. And like I say, got to got to school and it was boring. School had always been boring. I never went to the principal's office, never acted out like a lot of folks on the spectrum or folks with dyslexia. Didn't have that part of it. And I kind of ended up getting the label of very smart, but try harder was kind of always where it was, this kind of constant try harder deal. And, they didn't realize kind of how I was learning differently and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, I went to college for a year and a half, joined a fraternity, drank a lot of beer, had fun, really figured out this wasn't going the direction I wanted to. Joined the Army. I was a light infantry air assault combat medic. Came out of it, went back into kind of the world of where my father was lecturing on medicine. I kind of grown up around that. Did that for a little bit, moved to Australia and was there about 2 years before a venture capital group approached us. They'd actually knew my name via my father, who was, large in that community of maxillofacial orthopedics. And they were wanting to combine maxillofacial orthopedics with sleep medicine and develop a product that's competitive to CPAP that goes in your mouth. So if you've ever seen the things that go in people's mouths to stop snoring and apnea, that's what we pioneered. We weren't the first device. We were the first publicly held company to move into that space to do those devices.
Okay.
So that's kind of been, again, it's very asynchronous career pathway. Found myself the youngest guy that was in executive management or on the board by about 15 years. I was 30 when we did it. And it was a pro group. I mean, former McKinsey people, the guy that really did the stuff with us that, we authored the prospectus, contacted the institution, secured the underwriters. I was the lead pitch guy. And again, that's not normally the guy who kind of didn't even finish something equivalent to a JUCO. That's not
we're showing who's on your A team. We got the Asperger's guy leading the negotiations.
Yeah.
Oh, what?
Really, it's doing the pitch. And again, that's
exactly. That's what I mean. Like normally you would be like, what, are you insane?
Yeah. Well, and and again, labeled like that, I'm supposed to be the guy not looking you in the eye, that's staring in the corner, and doesn't like to talk.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is where these labels are so
that's exactly it. The
not
label's stupid.
Not congruent. But I tell you that to tell you that I was in a very unique place of being the person that could connect all three of those things together and was provided with a lot of freedom. I never had to come in as, junior management, get to middle management, and hopefully senior executive. I came into the C-suite. So I was allowed to accommodate. And I would have never gotten to the C-suite if I had to do it like most people have to do it. I was allowed to start at the top and then hire my own team. And I just unbeknownst to me, kind of probably subconsciously just hired very well around me because I know inherently what I'm not good at doing. I largely my success, and I think this really applies to any chief executive officer, if they're worth their salt and are honest with themselves, it's how well do you hire?
Oh God, yes.
How well do you hire, and can you empower those people? Can you give them, the authority to execute what you've given them responsibility for? And let's get on down the road. In my more unique kind of skill set is more around marketing and business development and taking those things we talked about earlier and packaging them, which again really allows you as a CEO to steer the boat, allows you to kind of look from the crow's nest and see what's coming, and then communicate that down to the team and really get the engine room going and all that kind of stuff. So
it's it's a great analogy, right? If you are leading the marketing, you've got the brand, you've got the value, you got the values, you got the brand, you got the marketing. You really are plotting the course.
Yeah, and I enjoy that part.
Yeah, and let people do the part you said about business, especially business, which is how you hire, and it's hiring around you. Yeah, meaning around your strengths and what you want to do.
100%. I'm all about the dissenting opinion in people that can go. It's funny, as we'd worked together for a long time. The guy I was telling you about that was my COO. We'd worked together for a while, and he helped me build the entirety of the U.S. business when we relocated to the States. And I was doing an interview, and I usually would bring in a couple of my C-suite members. And, this one person was in there, blah, 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 blah. And basically it came up that this guy told him, he was like, do not ever tell John yes. John knows yes. right? He doesn't need you to boost his ego or say yes. What he wants is for you to challenge everything that he puts in front of you. And yeah, and then the guy finished telling me, he was like, because if you're not doing that, why would we hire you? We already know what we know. I'm not hiring you to pat me on the butt and say, hey, look, this is a great idea. I want you there ripping through my logic. So again, that was a little bit different. You know, it's not exclusive to me or not exclusive to the spectrum. That's a lot of people that are successful doing that. But again, I think just being wired to where I want people to, I don't mind criticism. I don't like social criticism. I love criticism as long as it's positive in the business context, because, you know, there's a lot of bright people that can see things that I don't see.
Yeah.
And, you know, hey, look, that's a great idea. But have you thought about this? And it's like, great point, Ken. I hadn't thought about that. You know, and I'm very much a big believer. I think that the most ridiculous statement in the world is, you know, don't come up with a problem unless you have a solution. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
You know, identify problems and then we'll solve them together. And I think that very mindset, that former mindset of don't bring the problem forward unless you have a solution. It so stunts the growth of companies and personal development of employees, and just this whole, particularly in neurotypicals, it puts this thing in, well, I don't want to bring that up because I don't have the perfect solution. You know, it's not perfect. It's a business. We're going to have to course correct, and we may have to do a pivot, and we may have, but it's again, kind of back to the boat. The waves are out there. The wind's going to change, you know. You need to know
if you're sitting in the front of the bow and you see a wave, you might want to speak up.
Exactly.
We'll figure out how to deal with it. How about somebody like yourself? Maybe a message. It's great. We're at 27 minutes. I'm loving the new format. How about a message, or some advice for somebody like yourself, who may know something's not quite right, got some issues, what they're bubbling up as, about getting tested. And, did you do the right thing? What advice do you have for people, like yourself?
Yeah, well, I unequivocally did the right thing. I mean, I don't even know that I'd be here if I didn't. I was getting so depressed and just everything else. And probably should mention, forgot about this one, also had PTSD. That's military stuff. So throw PTSD on top of all that as well, which really makes for some nice spice in the soup. But yes, I would encourage, there's nothing to be ashamed of or embarrassed of. You're not defective. I think if more people understood who really is on the spectrum and what it means, that they would be excited about it. If you look at, people that are alive now, Elon Musk,
I was going to say the most famous autistic person's got to be Elon Musk.
Yeah, he did that thing on Saturday Night Live. But Steve Jobs was undoubtedly on the spectrum. Zuckerberg is.
They're both on the spectrum for sure.
Oh, totally. What's funny about them, and again, not comparing myself to them, I didn't go to Harvard like Zuckerberg. He went for a year. He was like, what's the point? I got to go do something else. Ted Turner did the same thing. Gates did the same thing. It's just, you're kind of in it. You got it. Let's roll. Let's build something.
I love, man, that's so cool.
So that's kind of from the, the spectrum-y side of it. But really with any of the mental health conditions or differences, just knowing, is just, it's huge. You're comfortable with it because you've kind of self-diagnosed in a way. And you know that, at this point in your life, or however the way that you're wired, you're like, okay, this is cool. I don't feel that I need to change anything. You've kind of self-accommodated through it.
Yeah,
right?
But it might be a good idea to know specifically, right? At the same time.
Yes, because it can give you the tools.
Like I had
I had to learn breathing, for example. Just stopping, not being tensed up and flexing all the time, which I didn't even realize I was doing. So now I can catch myself and be like, wait a minute, man, you're just all tense. Just take a breath, relax, let the whole thing kind of come down. I do take medicines for it. I went through every SSRI there is. None of them set well with me. The medicines I take are lamotrigine and buspirone.
Okay.
They're actually on label for bipolar. They're off label for autism, which again is this spectrum thing and how it connects. And it's not really bifurcated, and you don't, delineate it along straight lines.
Yeah.
It's blending. It's all shades of gray.
And that makes so much sense, right? I think, and again, I think that's partly too because they have to put some label, they have to put some words around it, they have to define it, And I think when you do that, you do, and as long as they can get into some gray spots, yeah, then it stacks on top of each other. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it really does. And again, kind of knowing what it is, and with me, again, being fairly rare to be fairly rare as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wear it as a badge of pride, along with not having a degree.
As you should.
Yeah, I mean, it's what I'm very, very comfortable with it, and I very much like being the guy. I have a really good group of. I've always had a close network of friends, and had, more acquaintances and stuff than most. And I have a great group of friends up here. I have my favorite little deli bar that I go to once a week on Friday. And, it's great to come in and actually be the autistic guy. And, there's lots of positive ribbing back and forth. Some trivia will come on, a song will come on, and I'll name it before. And now I'm just kind of the go-to guy. I'm kind of like Wikipedia for my friends.
Right.
Which is great. And then, and I tell you that again to tell you that then somebody who I don't know, or that's come in to the situation, either my friends will kind of play a trick on them, or they'll just kind of completely what's this guy doing? And then, oh my God, he's on the spectrum. It's like, yeah. So I kind of enjoy showing people, it's like, yeah, it's this as well, and I've been told
it's this as well.
Yeah. And I've been told I have a really good sense of humor, and I enjoy all that kind of stuff. And again, you're not supposed to have that on the spectrum. You're supposed to be dull and supposed to not, be interested in other stuff. And it's just not accurate. It's
or clever enough to formulate jokes and double entendres and everything else. Yeah. So, cause that's social, you're being articulate in a weird way. That's like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah. Which is wild because there's so many people. Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah, I think everybody on that show was autistic.
Yeah,
except maybe Elaine. Yeah, Elaine was a complete spaz. So yeah, literally that was a show about nothing. I've actually I always thought the secret formula was it was a show about nothing.
Yeah,
but it was that, but it was a bunch of autistic people doing it, which is even like absolutely fucking hysterical and endlessly entertaining.
Yeah, it is. I'm pretty sure
the real secret to the show.
I think it was. I'm pretty sure. I mean, Seinfeld has talked about it, right? But Larry David also has to be. I mean,
absolutely
getting those two together and getting it going. So yeah,
Kramer was at the farthest end of the spectrum there is.
Yeah, he's somewhere for sure. Yeah. Oh, Richards. I don't even know if he's on this planet.
Well, he eventually blew himself up with something. He was caught saying something on the mic. He got canceled. He's been canceled.
I think some racial stuff. It was I think
it was very throwing the N-word around or something. It was pretty. It was pretty low bar stuff.
Yeah.
But like, not surprising if he's autistic. Like, it could have. He saying stupid shit at the wrong time. Even trying to be funny and misreading the room.
Very much so. And it's impossible for me to read a room. And I've been told that my funniest stuff, I don't even mean to do it.
And that's, I could see him being that guy. And, that's a forever regret.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But that's
I mean, I think it's good. You want any other kind of closing thoughts? Anything you want to steer people to the foundation, or more information?
Sure. I mean, probably just the overall thing is, I would say to anybody that's listening, don't worry, don't get anxious about what, if you think there's something different with you, or that you think you need help, you go get it. It's it's not painful. It's very, very rewarding once you've understood it. Our foundation is On the Spectrum Foundation, and it can be found at that URL. It's onthespectrumfoundation.org.
www.onthespectrum.
On the Spectrum Foundation. Foundation is actually in the URL, and that's .org because we're a 501c3. But yeah, I'd welcome anybody to have a look at the site. Personally, what I'm doing these days is I'm teaching entrepreneurialism and micro and macro economics at a school that is all 2E. So all of my students are twice exceptional. They're talented and gifted. A lot of them autistic and dyslexic. And these kids are incredible. I have kids that are 13 years old, and this is a high school. They're 13 years old and taking all AP courses, and all of them on the spectrum, dyslexic, stuff that you're not supposed to be able to do. And they're actually the people most perfectly suited to do it. So that's where I'm spending most of my time these days.
What a blast. That must be it's so like energizing.
It's incredible. It is the most, other than listing the company and doing those 3 days of pitching, like Wachovia and stuff, that was a blast. Other than those 3 days of my life, this is the most fun I've ever had, for sure.
I cannot imagine, right, that being around kids with so much potential, and you're in a way you're more than a life raft, right? You're a speedboat for them.
There is an element of that, and it plays both ways. I mean, it's
sure,
very much so.
Yeah.
And stimulating. I mean, these kids, again, I won't rabbit on about it, but just how bright they are and how fast they move. And you could see in quote unquote normal school, public school, I mean, there's just no way a teacher couldn't keep up with them. It just wouldn't. I can see why it's so difficult for them to function that way. And obviously I can relate to some of that.
So and you're giving them a platform, which I'm a giant fan of. Or a safe, and not even a safe place, but a place to thrive.
Yes, absolutely.
John, awesome. I got the little on the spectrum is there, so if people can, hopefully I spelled spectrum right.
Dude, I'm dyslexic. Hold on, let me look. Yes, looks pretty right.
I have to try. So I looked at this password the other day. I was typing in, it was telling me the password was wrong. And it was on my phone number. And I looked at it like 6 times. I was like, "Are you friggin' kidding me? Delete, start over." And it worked.
That's great.
And it worked. Thanks so much, John. Great. Just hang on for a minute. We'll chit chat a little bit offline. But thanks everybody for watching. Anybody out there, and please do share this episode wherever you're watching it, and give us a little bit of love.